Soft spring sunlight streamed into the luxurious residential neighborhood of Brookline. Melissa Wilson gazed at the magnolia flowers blooming in her garden through the large window and let out a deep sigh. Despite her success as a high-end real estate agent, she still hadn't found her complete place in this elegant neighborhood. After graduating from Boston University, she had built a 10-year career in real estate and was now at the forefront of the industry. However, even these achievements seemed to be viewed as merely a vulgar profession in the eyes of the Wilson family. "I think I'll skip dinner with your mother this week," she said. Ethan looked up from his work laptop on the living room sofa. "Again?" "Melissa, Mother's been worried about you." "Yes, I know, but..." Melissa's words trailed off, masking the turmoil in her heart. 3 years into their marriage, Patricia Wilson's cold gaze hadn't softened one bit. "It's clear she thinks I'm the woman who ruined her son's life." "That's not true," Ethan denied immediately, but his voice lacked conviction. Without fail, after Sunday Mass at church, Patricia would bring up news about Julia, Ethan's childhood friend. Julia, a Harvard graduate who now worked as a pediatrician at a prestigious hospital, was the perfect lady Patricia had wanted as her son's wife. Living in an upscale neighborhood, building a successful career, and having a loving husband, on the surface, Melissa's life seemed perfect. However, her blemish of coming from a middle-class family in Minnesota seemed to be an indelible stain in Patricia's eyes. There had been some relief when her father-in-law Thomas was alive, just 6 months ago. The gentle physician, who had earned the community's trust as the head of neurosurgery at Brookline General Hospital, had been someone who quietly tempered his wife's excessive behavior. But after his death, Patricia's controlling behavior had only intensified. The weekly mother-son dinners. Despite his busy schedule as a senior vice president at an IT company, Ethan never missed this tradition. Meanwhile, Melissa had reduced her contact with her mother-in-law to about once a month. "Ethan, actually." Melissa stood up and walked over to her husband by the window. In her hand, she clutched a small envelope. "We're having a baby." Ethan's face lit up with surprise and joy. "Really?" 7 weeks along. 2 years of fertility treatments have finally paid off. Ethan stood up and embraced Melissa. Thank you so much." In her trembling husband's arms, Melissa harbored mixed feelings. When and how should they break this happy news to Patricia? Her mother-in-law, who served as president of the Church Women's Association and devoted herself to charitable activities, was outwardly an elegant and merciful woman. However, beneath that mask lay an abnormal attachment to her son and an obsessive adherence to traditional values. As a central figure at Holy Trinity Church, always mindful of others' eyes and obsessed with maintaining a perfect appearance, how would she take this news? "We should tell Mother soon," Ethan said. "Let's tell her at dinner this weekend." "Yes, right." Melissa smiled and nodded, but anxiety swirled in her heart. How would this happy event affect her relationship with her mother-in-law? No one could say. Soft chandelier light filled the private room at the upscale French restaurant La Maison. An elegant serving of seared foie gras appetizer graced the table, and the 1982 Chateau Lafite Rothschild in the glasses cast a deep sparkle. Patricia straightened her back and spread her napkin across her lap with perfect posture. "Congratulations on becoming vice president, Ethan. As your mother, I couldn't be more proud." Thank you, Mother, Ethan smiled. Melissa met her husband's eyes and gave a small nod. The time had come to tell her. Mother, actually, we have some happy news, Melissa began quietly. We're having a baby. For a moment, the air seemed to freeze. Patricia's hand trembled slightly. Ethan continued, we confirmed it with tests recently. Patricia's expression slowly changed. It was a perfect smile, like an actor performing on stage. Oh, how wonderful! Patricia exclaimed. We must celebrate. Waiter, champagne. Melissa felt unsettled by her mother-in-law's reaction. This unprecedented warmth. Yet something felt unnatural about it. The next morning, an unannounced visitor rang the doorbell. Good morning, Melissa. Patricia stood there. Dressed in a perfect Chanel suit, carrying an Hermès Birkin bag. I've brought a gift for the baby. For your and the baby's safety. In front of the entrance sat a brand new Volvo XC90. The silver body gleamed in the morning sun. Mother, this is too expensive. Nonsense, Patricia waved her hand. It's for my first grandchild. It has all the latest safety features. I've already put the registration in your name. Patricia walked around the car, explaining each safety feature in detail. There was something obsessive about her tone. The latest brake system. Perfect collision prevention system. Even the seatbelt tension adjusts automatically. Despite her mixed feelings, Melissa thought this might be a chance to improve their relationship. Maybe she had truly changed. Ethan was overjoyed like a child. Thank you, Mother. Melissa, let's take it for a test drive. A few days later, Melissa went shopping in the car. She consulted about post-pregnancy nutrition management at Whole Foods and bought organic ingredients. Her heart swelled with expectations for their new life ahead. On the way home, something went wrong as she approached Brookline Avenue. When she pressed the brake pedal, the car wouldn't slow down. If anything, it felt like it was speeding up. She tried to stay calm with deep breaths. But the pedal was completely unresponsive, as if dead. The intersection was approaching. The traffic light was changing from yellow to red. Stop, please. She desperately pulled the emergency brake, but that didn't work either. She honked the horn and flashed the hazard lights. But she could see a large truck entering the intersection. The thunderous sound of horns. The screech of tires. Baby. I'm sorry. Violent impact. The sound of shattering glass. Deploying airbags. Everything felt like it was in slow motion. Just before losing consciousness, Melissa saw a strange sight. Across the intersection, a black Mercedes was parked. When she next opened her eyes, she was in a private hospital room. Pure white ceiling. The smell of disinfectant. The sound of an IV drip. Everything felt surreal. You're awake, a nurse said gently. The baby? She asked in a hoarse voice. The nurse's expression clouded. That was enough to understand everything. At that moment, the room's door opened. Patricia entered. In her usual perfect attire, carrying a high-end brand flower arrangement. Melissa, that must have been terrible. Patricia's voice had an unnatural brightness. And with an icy smile, she whispered in her ear. The baby is gone now. My son is free. Melissa stared at Patricia, suppressing the pain throughout her body. Though her voice trembled, her words were clear. You'll regret this smile for the rest of your life. Patricia's expression froze for a moment. But she quickly composed herself and gracefully left the room. In Melissa's eyes, a quiet flame of determination was lit. This wasn't the end. Everything was just beginning. 2 weeks after being discharged, in early August, Melissa sat in her home office with her laptop open. On the screen was the Boston Police Accident Report. She shook her head at the conclusion of accident due to sudden brake system failure. This is too perfect. There were too many unnatural points in the police investigation. The simplified scene investigation. Partial missing surveillance camera footage. And Patricia's unnatural behavior. Everything pointed to something. Melissa picked up her phone and dialed a saved number. Jim Collins Detective Agency. Hello, this is Melissa Wilson. A warm, deep voice answered from the other end. Mrs. Wilson, I've heard the rumors. Can we meet? That afternoon, Melissa visited an old office building near Boston Public Garden. The door bore gold letters reading, James Collins Private Investigation. Welcome. Jim Collins was a well-built man who appeared to be in his late 60s. After a 20-year police career, he had added another 15 years as a private investigator. Behind his gentle expression lay sharp eyes. Will you believe my story? Melissa asked quietly. Jim let out a deep sigh. During my time as police chief, I saw similar cases many times. Accidents wrapped up with superficial investigations. And the darkness behind them. Melissa told him about the accident details and her suspicions about Patricia. Jim listened intently, occasionally taking notes. Let's begin the investigation, Jim said gravely. But please promise one thing. Your husband must not know about this investigation. I understand. Ethan wouldn't believe it yet. The investigation proceeded cautiously but steadily. Jim utilized his connections as former police chief to obtain all surveillance camera footage around the accident scene. Furthermore, he collected detailed analysis data from the Volvo dealership's maintenance records and the accident vehicle. In September, they made their first important discovery. Look at this, Jim pointed at his laptop screen. It showed someone who appeared to be Patricia meeting with a middle-aged man in work clothes in a back alley the night before the accident. A cash exchange could be seen. This man is a mechanic at the Volvo dealership, Jim said. Name's Mike Johnson. A veteran with over 20 years of experience. Through subsequent surveillance, Mike's background came to light. A man with debt, married to a gambling-addicted wife. And $100,000 in cash from Patricia. All the pieces were starting to connect. I'll make contact, Jim suggested. On a chilly night in early October, Mike approached a car in his apartment complex parking lot. Jim sat in the driver's seat. Get in, a quiet but authoritative voice. Who are you? Mike tensed up. Former police chief Jim Collins. I know everything about your past and present. The blood drained from Mike's face. Let's talk. About the $100,000 you received from Patricia Wilson. And about the brake system modification. Mike squeezed out words in a trembling voice. She threatened me. I needed money for my daughter's surgery. If you tell everything, there might be a chance to reduce your sentence, Jim advised. But if you stay silent. That night, Mike told everything. Patricia's contact. How he modified the brake system. And the guilt of knowing an accident would happen but staying silent. The evidence steadily accumulated. Mike's confession. Surveillance camera footage. Tools used for the modification. Cash transaction records. And the decisive evidence. Patricia's handwritten memo. She probably thought it was a perfect plan, Jim said while organizing the evidence. But there's no such thing as a perfect crime in this world. By late October, all the evidence was in place. Melissa quietly put into words the emotions she had long suppressed. Let's report it to the police. There was no hesitation in those words anymore. All evidence was submitted to the Boston Police Major Case Squad. Detective Marcus Brown let out a deep sigh while reviewing the materials. This is, clearly an attempted murder case. On a Sunday in early November, a charity event hosted by Patricia was being held at Holy Trinity Church. Elegant music played while upper-class ladies and gentlemen chatted. Police officers quietly entered. Mrs. Patricia Wilson, Detective Marcus stepped forward. You're under arrest for attempted murder. The venue erupted in chaos. Patricia answered with an elegant smile. Me? Don't be ridiculous. But her expression gradually crumbled. Especially when the handwritten memo emerged from the evidence, the blood completely drained from her face. The sound of handcuffs echoed in the church hall. Patricia's scream. And the shocked expressions of the gathered people. Melissa watched everything quietly. And then came the most painful moment. Telling Ethan. In their living room, Melissa laid out all the evidence before Ethan. Your mother tried to kill me and the baby. Ethan was speechless. Surveillance camera footage. The mechanic's testimony. And his mother's handwritten memo. All the evidence presented undeniable facts. It's a lie. Mother wouldn't. Ethan's voice trembled. And when he saw the final piece of evidence, he completely broke down. It was a recording of Patricia's words in the hospital room after the accident. Mother, why? Ethan's anguished cry echoed in the quiet night living room. In the Norfolk County Superior Court. As a solemn atmosphere hung in the air, Prosecutor Sarah Murphy read the indictment. I will state the charges against the defendant Patricia Wilson. 1 count of attempted murder. 1 count of property damage. 1 count of fraud. The defendant, under careful planning. Patricia sat in the front row, dressed in a luxury brand suit, maintaining an elegant posture. However, the slight trembling of her hands betrayed her inner turmoil. Defense attorney Robert Stein was one of Boston's most expensive lawyers. He stood up and began his argument in a calm voice. My client's actions were out of concern for her son. The psychiatric evaluation results also. At those words, Melissa in the gallery narrowed her eyes. Her husband Ethan squeezed her hand tightly. Witness examination began. The first witness was mechanic Mike Johnson. "I received $100,000 from Mrs. Patricia," he began testifying in a trembling voice. "I was instructed to modify the car's brake system." "Please state the specific instructions," the prosecutor prompted. "To make it look like an accident. And to ensure." Mike choked on his words. "To ensure that the fetus would." The courtroom fell silent. The next witness was a technician who analyzed surveillance camera footage near the accident scene. Then the emergency doctor who examined Melissa right after the accident. With each testimony, the outline of the case became clearer. During recess, Ethan whispered to Melissa in the hallway, "Something's wrong with Mother." Indeed, there were changes in Patricia's behavior. Cracks were beginning to show in her perfect lady facade. Afternoon court. Patricia's witness examination began. "I did nothing wrong," Patricia answered with dignity. "I was just trying to protect my family from someone who could ruin my son's life." "Then why did you modify the brakes?" the prosecutor pressed. "That's..." Patricia's voice wavered. "My son should have had a suitable marriage partner. Someone perfect in family background, education, everything. You call attempting murder protecting family." Patricia's expression distorted. "I understand. How much someone from the lower class like Melissa would taint our world. She and that child in her womb." The courtroom erupted. The judge's gavel demanded order. "Mother." Ethan's voice broke the silence. All eyes turned to him. "Mother, when did you become such a person?" The blood drained from Patricia's face. "Ethan, everything was for you." "Shut up," Ethan stood up. "You've been completely different since Father died. But to go this far." "Ethan, I only wanted your happiness." "Happiness?" Ethan's voice rang cold. "Mother, you tried to kill my wife and my child. How could that lead to happiness?" Patricia's perfect mask shattered with a sound. "No. No. Everything is wrong," she began screaming. "My son was born into a perfect family, received a perfect education, and was supposed to have a perfect marriage. But this woman ruined everything." The courtroom fell into complete chaos. Guards rushed to restrain Patricia. The evidence examination lasted 2 weeks. During that time, Patricia's abnormal attachment and obsessiveness gradually came to light. The psychiatric evaluation noted severe obsessive-compulsive disorder that had worsened after her husband's death. The day of the verdict. The courtroom was packed with spectators. Defendant Patricia Wilson, the judge's voice rang out. "Your actions were premeditated and extremely malicious. Neither insanity nor diminished capacity is recognized." The verdict was delivered. The court sentences the defendant to 15 years in prison. The gallery stirred. "Ethan!" Patricia cried out. "Everything was for you." But Ethan had already turned his back. Taking Melissa's hand, he quietly left the courtroom. As reporters swarmed around them, the couple got into their car. "It's finally over," Melissa said quietly. "Yes," Ethan let out a deep sigh. "I'll never see Mother again." Those words carried both deep sadness and strong determination. After the verdict, Patricia's collapse progressed rapidly. She lost her position as president of the Church Women's Association, and her friends drifted away one by one. Her fall from graceful society further devastated her mental state. The media widely reported the case as the dark underbelly of Boston high society. Her hypocritical charitable activities were exposed, and the social status she had built crumbled easily. In late December, Ethan was packing all his mother's photos into a cardboard box. "Are you sure about this?" Melissa asked worriedly. "Yes," Ethan answered resolutely. "Mother no longer exists in our lives." The cardboard box was sealed away in the basement storage. Outside, the year's last snow had begun to fall quietly. As if purifying everything, it wrapped the city in a pure white garment. Melissa and Ethan stood together by the window. "Let's start our new life," Melissa whispered. Ethan nodded silently. Several years later, in a quiet residential area of Cambridge, about an hour's drive from Brookline, in front of a house warm with Christmas decorations, a 4-year-old girl with a bright red ribbon was making a snowman. "Alice, aren't you cold?" Melissa called from the doorway. "I'm fine." Alice responded with a smile. "Look, I made a snowman." Melissa nodded with a smile. For years since they had adopted Alice, her smile had become a beacon of hope for the entire family. "I'm home," Ethan's car returned. Since becoming CEO, work had become even busier, but he never neglected time with his family. "Papa." Alice ran to him. "Oh, is this a snowman?" Ethan lifted his daughter. "It's very well made." "Can I open my Christmas presents?" "That's a treat for tomorrow morning," Melissa gently explained. The family of 3 entered the living room wrapped in warm light. Under the large Christmas tree lay presents for Alice. The fireplace fire softly illuminated the room. "Melissa," Ethan turned to his wife. "Are we good for next week's final adoption interview?" "Yes," Melissa nodded. The meetings with Noah, who would become Alice's brother, were progressing well. "Noah is looking forward to becoming part of our family too." Meanwhile, at the same time, in a rehabilitation facility, Maplewood Care Center, in the Boston suburbs, Patricia Wilson sat in a wheelchair, staring out the window. "Mrs. Wilson, it's time for your medicine," a nurse called. There was no response. After falling in prison during her 4th year and becoming paraplegic, she now lived in this rehabilitation facility following her parole. No trace remained of her once dignified appearance. In her room at the facility, numerous letters she had sent lay piled up, all returned marked "address unknown." Ethan had completely changed his address and cut off all ties with his mother. "Ma'am, it's dinner time," a caregiver called. "Today is a special day," Patricia mumbled with vacant eyes. "Christmas Eve, we used to, as a family." Her words trailed off. The happy times in her memories now brought only pain. In the facility hallway, young nurses were gossiping. From Patricia's room window at Maplewood Care Center, she could see the nearby park. There, families were chatting happily. Tears fell. "Merry Christmas, Ethan." Words heard by no one were absorbed into the cold window glass. Meanwhile, in the Cambridge house, warm family time flowed on. "Hey, Papa," Alice asked while reading a picture book on Ethan's lap. "Where's Grandma?" A moment of silence. Melissa watched Ethan's expression worriedly. Ethan answered quietly, "Your grandmother went far away. We can't see her anymore, and that's how it has to be." "Why?" "Sometimes," Melissa gently added an explanation, "even adults make wrong choices. But we learn from that, and we try to become a better family." After thinking for a moment, Alice smiled and said, "I'm glad I'm Papa and Mama's child." Ethan and Melissa looked at each other and smiled. The scars certainly remain. But the happiness they gained by overcoming them is irreplaceable. The night deepened. Alice headed to her room early, saying, "I have to sleep before Santa comes." Ethan and Melissa were alone in the living room. The fireplace fire flickered quietly. "Next year will be our first Christmas as a family of 4, Melissa said. "Yes," Ethan held his wife's hand. "I try not to think about Mother anymore. But sometimes, when I see Alice's smile, I'm reminded anew of the magnitude of Mother's mistakes." Ethan. Mother lost sight of what true happiness is. There are things more important than family background and social status. Melissa silently leaned against Ethan. Outside the window, large snowflakes were falling. The city's illuminations twinkled fantastically through the curtain of snow. "Hey," Melissa whispered. "Our family's story is just beginning." "You're right," Ethan smiled too. Mother's chosen path was too sad. But we have a different path. The fireplace fire gently cast their shadows on the wall. Meanwhile, at the rehabilitation facility, a single light remained on in Patricia's room. She continued staring out the window. The price she paid for seeking perfection too much was far too great. Now, all that remained for her was regret and time that could never be recovered. But life goes on. In the Cambridge house, Alice was dreaming of Christmas by her pillow. Melissa and Ethan were talking about their new family's future. And next year, Noah would join them. This family's story continues on. The shadows of the past certainly exist. But they turn those into lessons, nurturing stronger, gentler bonds. Perhaps that is the true victory. Outside the window, the Christmas snow gently wrapped all the stories in its embrace.